Well, again, good morning, everybody, and welcome. If you have joined us during worship, I see there's some additional name tags popped up. So good morning to you. I hope you're doing really, really well. It's fab to have you with us, coming to worship God together and learn together. It's just awesome. So today, I am actually going to start by launching kind of giving an illustration. In a minute, I'm going to put up a picture, or Angela's going to kindly put up a picture for us. It's an illustration about how we can encounter beauty on different sort of levels, and also it illustrates on how difficult it is for us to convey, to communicate an encounter of such extreme beauty. And this is just this side of heaven. This is on earth. Okay, so pop up this picture. This is a picture here of us, Ange, myself, and Naomi standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. It was amazing, just incredible privilege to be able to be there. We've been a couple of times actually. And we just kind of stopped off at various spaces around the south and the east rim of the Grand Canyon. It was just awesome. These just taking in these breathtaking, surreal images in front of us. And we could have just stood there for hours and hours and hours. Just every moment of the day, as the sun moved over the sky, it just presented something different, slightly different in what you were seeing. And now you may look at this image and you probably go, yeah, or at best, oh, it looks beautiful, yeah. But the thing is, this is just a two-dimensional image, a two-dimensional representation of an event or a place. And it's pretty good. It's a pretty good representation, but it's a long, long way short of the real beauty of the actual scene. It's just a two-dimensional image. Now, I could have given us a slightly better experience of the Grand Canyon. I could have taken a whole collection of photos to the left or different angles to the right or whatever, and just give you a little bit more, something that goes more towards helping you build a 3D image of the scene. But again, it would be just so far short of the experience. Now, unfortunately, that's just the limitation of viewing something of immense beauty through 2D, two-dimensional captured images. Now, you may have actually been fortunate enough, as we have, to have actually visited the Grand Canyon, I don't know. And seeing these images has kind of invoked memories within your own mind of your own experiences of actually being there. Or you could have visited somewhere which is quite like it. So, mountainous area or valleys or whatever. And so your mind now is actually able to kind of turn those 2D images into a 3D memory of the experience. So you're kind of seeing this thing again now on a different level to others. I find that interesting. Now, the thing is when Ange and I look at this picture, we see something way, way more on different levels still. And it takes on a whole bunch of different dimensions for us. We can still remember what we were feeling. We were feeling that intimidated awesomeness of the Grand Canyon. We felt so small against this massive thing. We can remember the exact feelings that we were invoked when we stepped up towards the edge and peered over. It was frightening. We can remember all the thoughts that were going through our minds. We can remember the warm yet refreshing breeze that blew through our faces, against our faces. We can remember all the quiet mumbles of conversation among people that were around us who also were trying to take in the awesomeness of this really quite surreal scene. I mean, how possibly can I effectively pass on to you all of that experience? I just can't. And so kind of like the point is in this opening illustration is we all experience or observe beauty on different levels. And also there is a limit to how we can convey profound encounters of beauty that we have even in this world with the tools of expression that we have at our disposal. So with that in mind, let's carry on. We're continuing on our series on Heaven is My Throne, talking about the topic of heaven, and we've been tapping into some of the many stories of people who feature in John Burke's book imagine heaven. Now, I don't know about you, I found this very, very interesting topic, and particularly comforting for me at this time. I mean, I recommend the book if you haven't read that yet. Or do get hold of that. Basically, John has interviewed over 1,000 people who have encountered NDEs, or near-to-death encounters, experiences, and he noticed a bunch of repeating themes that come up in these people's stories time and time again as they tell of how they've died, and they've transferred from this world, this existence, to another dimension, and then back again. Now, as I say, I find these stories really fascinating and compelling, not only just because they confirm what the scriptures tell us about heaven and life after this life, but also that I've been really keen for us to see how the people of the New Testament, in recognizing the reality of the glory ahead of them, this heaven, it allowed them to sort of, or they allowed it to impact their lives and how they lived in this life. So for us then, it's like knowing that we are going to live forever, it changes how we live now. I mean, we're just going to look at some of the words of the Apostle Paul that he wrote. Remember, Paul, he had a couple of these strange near-to-death experiences, and he's got personal insight into that alternate dimension of reality that we call heaven. And he writes this over and over again, how living with the knowledge of that heaven, or knowledge that it really exists, of what it's like, it affects how you live now. It shapes us now. So if you have a Bible, we're looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 2. We're going to come in at verse 6. And this is Paul. He says, "We do, however, we speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age, or of the rulers of this age, who are coming to nothing. No, we declare God's wisdom, a mystery that has been hidden, and that God destined for our glory from before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory." So Paul then, he's saying through the death and the resurrection of Jesus, what he did, what Jesus did, is he effectively opened up a way, a wormhole, if you like, if you really get sci-fi, a wormhole between this age and the age to come. So between this world and an alternate dimension of reality that we call heaven. He's made it possible, even for the characteristics of heaven, a wisdom which originated in heaven to break backwards into this world. Hence is what he was saying there, that we see and we speak from this heavenly wisdom here now. And then he kind of wraps up what he was saying there in verse 9. He says, "However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things that God has prepared for those who love him. These," he said, "are the things that God has revealed to us by his Spirit." So Paul, then, he seems to be saying that, heaven's reality, the heaven reality which God has set before us, is just so mind-blowing. I mean, you haven't seen anything like it this side of heaven, on earth. You couldn't even begin to imagine the stuff that God has prepared for us. But the thing is in Paul, what Paul believed, what was in Paul's mind was what Jesus did through the cross, through his death and resurrection. He made a way through for us from this world to the next. But not only that, but not only do we get to move forward into this amazing, mind-blowing place sometime in the future, but heaven, or the characteristics, the attributes of heaven, they can actually break backwards into this present world. Paul talks about this over and over again, and not just in relation to things like wisdom and knowledge, healing and justice and all those other things, but also just how the world itself is being transformed because heaven is breaking back into the present age. And what's more, it's being revealed through us, the church, and through suffering, no less. Great. What's he saying in Romans 8? In Romans 8, from verse 18, it says, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. So Paul is saying that because of the glory, that heaven ahead of us, it enables us to kind of navigate suffering now different to the way we would, in such a way that it enables heaven to be made manifest in and through us. And the world, the earth is yearning for that. He goes on in verse 19, for the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. But not only so, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit, we groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. Now, I don't know about you, but my entire body is saying, amen to that. I am so longing for that. The redemption, Lord, come bring the redemption of my body and all the aches and all the pains. This is only me, isn't it? Yeah, I guess. But I just so long for that. I look forward to a time where being in a place where I'm just pain-free. No more pain in my knees and my shoulders, and no more, that calf muscle problem and the lower back and all those sorts of things. I just so look forward to that time. He goes on in verse 24. But in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Paul is saying, yes, I know you're not actually seeing this heaven come and it outworked in your bodies right now, but that's why it's called hope. It's like, it's for another time. It's ahead of you. And yes, we get glimpses of that. We get to see tasters of that future hope coming into the here and now. When he carries on, he says, who hopes for what they already have? Of course, nobody. But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. Paul then is effectively saying that when we actually get our minds and our hearts around the reality of the glory of heaven that is before us, it enables us to experience suffering different. And we don't get stuck in that place of just fixating on all of our troubles and trials and anxieties. There is this hope in us that says, you know what, there is a life and another reality called heaven. It's ahead of us, but it's available to me in Jesus, and I'm going to live for all eternity within that reality. And you know what, in small ways I experience that breaking back into my present reality, and it shapes the way I live now. And that's what we're praying for. When we pray the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, Lord, let your kingdom come, let your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. Everybody was saying Birmingham or something, or so in heaven, okay? We are praying, Lord, let the reality of that alternative dimension, the future glory of heaven, come and break into this present reality. So when we actually pray that prayer, when we actually believe what we're actually praying there, if we believe that there is another reality that we call heaven, along with all the blessings and all the benefits and all the beauty and all those things, and that it is breaking back into our present world reality, if we're actually going to even expect to recognize that prayer is actually being answered and it's working in some way, and to notice that the things on earth are starting to look like, and just a little bit like heaven, then we need to have a good idea in our mind of what heaven actually looks like, right? So this morning we're actually going to look at how some of the people of the scriptures and some of the people who encountered these near-to-death experiences, they experience and encounter a beauty of a place that is, well, quite frankly, inexpressible. They find themselves falling over their own words as they try to describe the breadth and the depth and just the sheer breathtaking beauty of what they encounter with senses that just aren't able to translate that, or with senses that they just weren't aware that they actually had. It's like there is no earthly language that is sufficiently eloquent enough to be able to capture the real depth of these experiences that they encounter. Or it's like the languages that they do have, it kind of leaves them sounding like they've been tripping on LSD or something, But so, just take John, for example. The Apostle John, he's writing in the book of Revelation. And when you read what he writes about heaven's throne room, it's as though he is stumbling around and grappling for words which just aren't there. They're escaping him. It's like his literary machine inside has broken down. He just can't find the words to express. It's in chapter 4, Revelation 4. We haven't got it here, but we haven't got the time. But he's struggling, and he's saying things like there is this sea, and it's like glass, and it's clear, but it's kind of glistening like crystal as well. He's saying things like there's this throne, and there was this rainbow, but it was like an emerald, and it was wrapped around the throne as well. It was like so bizarre. A little bit later on in the Revelation, he talks about taking this scroll. He's got this thing, and he says, and it tastes sweet like honey, and then he takes it, and then in the next instance, it's like it's turned sour in his stomach. It's just, the whole thing sounds like he's on drugs or something. It's bizarre, and but actually that's exactly the same way that these people who have these near-to-death experiences, it's the same as them. They struggle like crazy, and they sound exactly the same as John. They talk about things like colours, and they talk about beauty, but then they use metaphors that use or involve the use of taste senses. How does that work out? They say things like, there's light and life and colour, and it tastes like, it's so weird. Or they say that God was present, but, God, he was light, and so there was light, but then you could feel this light or whatever. Then when they communicate with other people, it's not like spoken words. It's more like, it's kind of like this heart-to-heart connection. It's like heavenly Bluetooth then. It's kind of like, it's just strange. But then I find even more fascinating to that are all these cases of blind people who have encountered a near-to-death experience. And they come back and they describe the things that they saw in heaven. So these are people who have never seen anything at all, blind from birth. And so they have this, they've got no real reference for imagination or anything like that. In fact, this phenomenon has just gripped the science world so much that there have been dozens and dozens of studies on blind people who have encountered near-to-death experiences. And you know what? It has caused many skeptical scientists to just have to change what they believe to be true about reality and existence and so forth. With the advancement in science over the past 10, 20, 30 years, we've been able to kind of map out and observe the human brain function and all its activity in real time as it happens. So as people are going through all kinds of circumstances, including death, they can monitor the brain. They have learnt, for example, which parts of the brain are responsible for memories and for imagination. And so they're able to observe all those parts of the brain. They see them all fire up on the screen as that in relation to kind of various experiences that these people have go through. And so for when blind people, when they've been monitored and looked at how their visual cortex parts of their brains fire as the individual sleeps or dreams, the visual imagination cortex then, whatever that is, the function, and they monitor that. And you know what? Nothing happens. Nothing. when it comes to the visual imagination functions, there is absolutely nothing. So when a blind from birth person dreams a dream, they only dream and imagine with smell, taste, touch, and sound. All those things, but not anything to do with visual. But then they have these near-to-death encounters in which they express all of the visual elements of their experience of heaven. And some even describe the scene of their crash, for example, or they may describe the scenes of the medics as they're attempting to resuscitate them in hospital. And you know what? It's all accurate. This throws people. And so these blind people, they see and they describe things of heaven, things like grass and trees and meeting their grandmother and seeing their smile and how they walked. And they see much in the same way as a seeing person would see, and they stumble over the same difficulties in describing that, and only more, obviously. But you see, what happens is when people encounter heaven, it's like their physical body and their senses are just opened right up, and they are literally flooded with these experiences that are just impossible to convey effectively. They are beyond the tools and the means of description that we have. Now, the thing is, I'm thinking again about how heaven breaking back into this world, and I think we do. In many ways, we encounter experiences in the world in that similar sort of way. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've been in a room with a bunch of friends, and it's a time where all of those insecurities, all those fears that we have, which kind of plague our minds in the context of relationships and all those fears, but you're in a place and all that is gone. It is absent, and you're just there. You're connecting with one another, sort of heart to heart, if you like. I don't know if you've been there. It's just so beautiful, and you feel that sense of just belonging, just being there, connected and contented, safe, not being judged, and no need to judge anybody else. It's kind of like heaven. It's like heaven. And yet others in that same situation, they may just sense it as like a fun hangout time. It's like there are multiple dimensions to experience when it comes to recognizing the beauty of the kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven, if you like. It's like when we gather to worship God together. You remember that? When we could actually come together. And when we have the beauty of music. Music is often painted in the scriptures as a beautiful gift to us, and it enables us to sort of maneuver around some of our worldly thinking and so on. And it creates a potential to move us and open us up emotionally before God and before one another. And yet, to encounter that, we have to intentionally open yourself to participate in that. That's what I was saying at the beginning. You have to intentionally open yourself to how God is actually moving within that physical space. And I know many of you have encountered worship and music on that sort of level. It's like you're right in that place and you're actually encountering the presence of God right there. And yet the next person to you is in the exact same situation. It's been little more than a pleasant, hearing pleasant music bouncing around the walls. And so there are all these different levels of encounter, like these different levels of encountering our Grand Canyon scene, for example, different dimensions of experience that coexist in the same space or in the same event or whatever. Sometimes we become aware of heaven and God. Sometimes we just don't. Now, in near-to-death experiences, most people, they express how they encounter, or their encounter of beauty, the beauty of heaven. It just leaves them completely beside themselves. They are out of themselves. And I'm sure most of us can relate to that in some small way. Maybe you've been walking along one day, you turn a corner and you're greeted by this magnificent sunset. That has just caused you to, it just locked you in your place, and you pause. And just for a moment, it's like all of the things, all our troubles, all our anxieties, they just melt away as you're trying to absorb the awesome beauty of this, what you're seeing. in front of you. Or again, when you're listening to music, music can be so powerful. You can be listening to a music track, and it's like you're just lost in the song. Have you done that? You're transported somewhere, and maybe just for that moment as you listen to this song, it's like suddenly I'm become unaware of that back pain that I've had all these years or something. It's just what music can do. So I think that we can, and we do, encounter that future glory of the beauty of heaven, even now, every now and again, breaking back into our present reality. Sometimes it hits you unexpectedly, and sometimes we have to actively or intentionally decide to engage, to participate in order to see it. Now, we're just going to finish this morning with a video clip. It's another interview of a guy who'd had a near-to-death experience. He was a flight pilot. He's incredibly successful. He wasn't really pursuing God in his life at that time, but he had this accident and he died. Now, as we watch this video, you see how well he speaks at the beginning. He's incredibly intelligent, a guy. He's very articulate. He has no problems at all in expressing himself. Then you see something change. It changes when it comes to him trying to explain or convey his experience in his encounter of heaven. You watch how he stumbles and fumbles and grapples around trying to find the words. Let's take a look.
You know, Dale, it's been so fun. We've hung out the last day or so, and just, you know, I mean, you are a captain. You're an engineer mind, and have run multi-million-dollar businesses in the airline industry, and yet this experience has defined your life, hasn't it?
That's an understatement, but yes, it is true.
So take us back to that day. That was the very plane that took the lives of the other two pilots with you.
Yeah.
What happened? What do you remember after that crash?
I hovered above the crash site, watching, learning, asking questions, followed the ambulance. My body was put in the ambulance, raced to the hospital, even though they thought I was dead to begin with. Their life came back in me. I went into the hospital, but not in my body, but above it. In the emergency room, they were working on me, doctors and nurses, cutting my gray slacks and shirt off. I was all bloodied, and I was pretty much of a mess. But I watched this from what looked like a bird's eye view, and I saw all the commotion going on. I'm asking questions. I had this life review of one moment in my life, not all my life, just one moment of my life, and it was when I was in the 5th grade, where I had prayed to receive Jesus into my heart as a young 11 and 12-year-old kid. And I was full of zeal for God at that time, wanted to live for Him with my life, and I was genuine and sincere. But when this flashback took place in the emergency room, when I was in this accident, I realized that I was no longer that young kid who loved God. I was a kid who had kind of lost my way and loved my life and loved my goals and my dreams, because it was all about me. It was all about what I wanted, not what God wanted. And I was sad about what had become of me. I mean, I still knew God. I still knew there was a God, and I did know that Jesus was His Savior, but I had lost my way along the path of living for myself. And but the grief and all suddenly departed, and I moved out of the hospital into a deep outer space. Long story there, it's in the book, of course, but I saw this city of gold this golden, brilliant, it was white light in the center, but it moved out, and it was a ball of heavy, thick gold light. And all the colors in the rainbow were in the white, but what I saw was the white and the gold. And as I got closer and closer, Pastor John, I knew that this was the city, a holy city. I knew I was in heaven.
You're coming, like flying into a city.
Yeah, flying into a city, approaching and decelerating and descending. Why God would do that?
Only God would do that for a pilot, right? Does that mean I'm going to be kicking a soccer ball through the gate?
It means that we're going to have to go through flying lessons here pretty soon. Yeah, I'll help.
No, but that's just so fascinating. Did it feel like flying? I mean,
no, there was no sensations of G-forces or physical distortion of the eyes squinting, none of that. There was no discomfort in any way, but travel was extremely fast, and then it began to slow down as I got near what I called the city of God. I knew it was the city of God, and I knew God reigned here, but he was in the light. And it was on the other side, there was a wall around the city.
How big was the city?
The city was huge, way larger than anything like Paris or London or Beijing or anything, Mexico City, way bigger than that. And what I saw, and I'm able to kind of quickly judge distances, because you're trained to do that, but about 40 miles into this city, way back beyond the wall, there was an event going on that is, it's easy to describe when I write it, because I can write better than I can speak. Sorry about that. But there was, of course, the mountains and the flowers and the air, all the things that you've mentioned before. But there was this humongous crowd of people and angels that I was able to see from a long way away. I was looking over the wall, but still on the outside of the city. And this group of people and angels were moving with the music, and they were moving in praise and swaying with the music, and talk about oneness and unity and love. There's life in music. The light is full of life and love, and it's light that's palpable. It's thick. It has substance and weight to it, and all the colors in the rainbow are in it. But that light, and I knew is coming from God. I knew it. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew this was God. I mean, it's like you would say here on the earth, well, duh, It's God. The light comes from God, but in that light is the love of God. How do you describe the love of God? Well, you spent a lifetime trying to do that. It's unconditional love. It's not based on who you are, what skills or talents you have, how much money or success you have. It's based on just the fact that you and I are the creation of God, and he loves us. He loved me, and I could hardly... I told myself I wouldn't cry this time.
You know what? You know what's so awesome?
The poor guy. I mean, do you feel for him as he's trying? I mean, do you see how he struggles, with his words? He's totally mixing up metaphors as he's trying to explain himself. It's like God and light, but it's a gold ball, but it was a city, a rainbow, and all the colours of the rainbow in the white gold ball, light, feels, love. I mean, you feel for the guy, don't you? You really do feel for him. And actually in the interview, he continues in the exact same vein right the way through to the end of his interview. I mean, you should hear him try and describe grass. He's trying to describe grass in heaven, and it's quite funny. There's the difficulties that he faces with that. But also you can see how he is like literally reliving the experience, isn't he? As he is telling the story, it's like so dramatically altered the course of his life, and he's now living differently as a result of that. Again, and this is a question I keep asking over and over again in this series, is what if that's true? What if what he says is true? What changes for you knowing that that's true? What about the things that you stress about? What about the things that you feel are important in your life right now? You know, if what the scriptures say is true and what all these people say is true, then to me, I think that changes a lot. You know, then heaven really is a reality. It really is ahead of us, and it is also present with us here and now. Now, we're running out of time. I was going to get really sci-fi and start talking about multi-dimensions of reality and string theory and unified field theory and all that sort of stuff. I haven't got really time to get into that, but I just can't get over that thing that Jesus said about the kingdom of heaven is here now. The kingdom of God is near you. The kingdom of God is at hand. And it just more and more as I think through this, it feels, it really is. And even scientists, they're kind of pointing to the ideas, you know, we're in a 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional world with time. They're pointing to the fact that there's a sixth or seventh dimension that we aren't able to access. Some are even saying up to 11 or 12. Do you know, I think as we are the people who pray that prayer, Lord, let your kingdom come, let your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. My prayer, my hope then is that we would become those who would recognize heaven when it does come. When that prayer is answered and the kingdom of heaven arrives on the earth as it is in heaven, may we actually recognize that. May we see that. May we at least just slow down enough to recognize and pause enough to take in the beauty that God puts in front of us. That we would just pause and appreciate and invest in those heart-to-heart relationships that God has coupled us up with. And also my hope is that we will intentionally enter into and participate in those spaces that God has blessed us with, you know, at times of worship and so forth. You know, I'm so grateful for music. I'm so grateful for musicians and artists and sculptors and all those people whose work and their skills that can help carry us right into the presence of God. You know, remember the scriptures, it tells us that God dwells in the praises of his people. I mean, maybe for those of us who choose to stand and just watch in our times of worship, you know, maybe we'll watch others, and maybe even with a critical heart sometimes, may we choose instead to truly engage, to participate and to experience the beauty of heaven and the beauty of God in the very midst of our worship. So I want to encourage us, your homework this week then is to take some time aside this week, solitary time, just your devotional time. Maybe get your earphones on, get your most favorite worship album on loop and crank it up and just allow yourself to get lost in God's presence. May you be blessed with his presence in your worship time this week.